In the last module of the atmospheric section of the course, we are going to be talking about climate. I wanted to start off with a short video that talked a little bit about what climate is. Oftentimes when we hear about climate these days, we hear about it in the context of climate change, and that's an important thing to talk about, and we're going to reflect on that a little bit in this course as well. But climate is something more fundamental than just an atmospheric phenomenon that is changing. Climate is the way that we describe any particular part of the world and what its long-term weather is like. And by long-term weather, we're referring here to how its temperature fluctuates and changes over the course of a year, and how its precipitation changes and reflects over the course of the year. Climate isn't weather per se, but weather is a very important part of climate. And all the things that we've talked about up until this part of the course, from weather patterns, but also broader atmospheric systems and patterns, all play a role in creating what we refer to as a climate. There are a number of key things that are climate controls. They're all things that we've talked about in this course already, so they should be very familiar to you. The first of them is simply insolation. How much sunlight strikes an area at a particular time of year, whether or not that insolation is high quality or low quality, and its length all impact how warm or cool an area is. We also know that the Earth has very specific pressure belts in it, and those pressure belts often come with weather, like the weather that we find around the intertropical convergence zone, which is wet, the doldrums, but also the subtropical highs, which are very dry and warm, or the subpolar lows, which are regular mid-latitude cyclones that move through an area. All these things help to create the regular patterns that we find in a climate, which in turn have big impacts on how much precipitation falls in an area at any particular time of the year. We also talked earlier in the course about this idea of a difference between a continental area and a maritime area. Continental areas we know heat and cool more quickly than maritime areas do, which are moderated by the ocean. And these play a big role in creating climate, in addition to basic things like the latitude that impact the insolation. All these things together will create temperature patterns and moisture patterns that create the climate classes that we're familiar with and we'll talk about in this course. We'll focus in each of the climates talking about the thermal regime of that climate, how warm it gets, how cold it gets, and how that changes over a season. Its precipitation regime, the same thing, how wet an area gets or how dry it gets, and what sort of predictable fluctuations there are in precipitation. Now it's worth noting, before we talk any more about climate and climate classification, that climate classification isn't perfect. It assumes a great deal of homogeneity in one particular part of the world. But we know, especially in areas that have lots of mountains in them, that mountains can create a lot of variation. Just think about South Central Alaska. Essentially, the whole area is considered a subarctic climate, but there are vast differences between places like Palmer and Anchorage and Girdwood, which are all relatively close to each other. A lot of those differences have to do with the fact that we've got large mountains that have a very big impact on orographic precipitation, or the lack thereof. So these are all things that we're going to be thinking about and contemplating a bit here as we talk about each of the world's climate regions.